Hello friends, this is a short video about the state of Ukraine and what I believe is happening now. So the Pustalinin or Putins are growing desperate. And there are some people who may think that this has the past 7 or 8 days decided the outcome of the war. Actually, the past 7 days decided the outcome of the first round or the first chapter, and most likely set the tone for the remainder of the war. But knowing Putin's mentality, and I put that in plural because Putin may be a deep fake or whatever it is, we don't care. There is a polity, a regimen ruling in Moscow, and that's the one I'm talking about. So when I say Pustalinin, it's just a generic term for what you know what, right? So now they're going desperate, and you may think, and I would say that the tone is set for the rest of the remainder of the fight. But no, actually, the Pustalinin have this deadly mentality. You do not know them. If you look across history, their history and that of their ancestors, you will know their commotion and their movement and their motion and their notion and their dogma. And it's not a simple thing. It's just a continuation of one thing. They fail a lot, but they continue the work. They continue the onslaught. The lizards are basically attacking, similar to a Komodo dragon in one of those, the Komodo Island in Indonesia, those very large lizards. What they do is they cannot bring down a prey such as a deer. So they bite it and they infect it, and they wait about for that deer to die for about 7 days, 10 days, whatever it is. They keep shadowing that, prey that deer until that deer dies, and then they start eating it. Now that's how long it takes for a deer to die. In human terms, or devil's terms, or Muscovites, the Pustalinins, this could be 100 years or 1,000 years. That's their mentality. They will keep doing what they're doing, and they'll keep going what they're going to do. They are after certain target and certain purpose and certain status of life on this planet. No. This is not overactive imagination. This is not exaggeration. This is not a fiction. This is a reality, folks. So the remainder of the war may be long. So now they're certain they're not going to win. Well, they were certain they're not going to win in Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan, for that matter. What I mean by Afghanistan is when they entered Afghanistan as Soviet Union and they murdered millions and they destroyed villages and towns and cities and so on and so forth. Eventually were pushed out, but eventually were destroyed, if you will. But the fact of the matter is, that's them. They are an extension of a tripod called Chinese regime, Iran's regime, Russia's regime, and this is the upper chamber of the tripod, which is under Israel, right? So now they're growing desperate, and right now they're in a state of reformulating a new assault on Ukraine, if you will. So the facts are this. China is helping. Oh, China is helping a lot financially, of course, and intelligence and so on. And so are the Gulf Arab countries. And so is the United States under table and so on. And there's, as you can see, the least help they are getting, at least from Western Europe, is they are looking the other way and they are pretending that they're in opposition, fake opposition to Putin and so on and so forth. There is probably some movement now, but this is only a PR because if they have really supplied Ukraine with really good weapons, effective weapons, you will see the Russians basically completely decimated and devastated. They are now, but they're still breathing and they're alive in Ukraine is what I'm talking about. Like I said, the problem with this is I know for certain that Moscow or those lizard eyes of Moscow, or that evil dark side in Moscow, is not as powerful or as big or as effective as you think it is. When it is countered by equal force, these will falter. And that has been proven so far. They faltered in Syria, but they resorted to genociding civilians, mass civilians, under the watchful eye of the United Nations and the international community. I'm not blaming anyone here because I know how religious and the dynamics of religions and dogmas function in the undertow, if you will. So I'm not criticizing here. I am criticizing, but I don't expect anything else to really have taken place. So in Iraq, so in Chechnya, and now it is very obvious appearing that side of the Putins is pretty much appearing in Ukraine. Now here's the deal: the Shiite population, which is really controlled by the upper echelons of the Shiites, are Israelis. Really, Shiism was established by certain rabbis 1400 years ago, and they are still functioning, and they are basically minions and dogs, trained to kill, and they are in Central Asia, although they are a very small minority in the Muslim world, but they're the main tripod of Israel. When I say Iran, I really say the Shiites, right? So now what you're going to see, they're going uneasy about the loss, or about Putin losing the fight, or Pustalinin, let's put it this way. So here's my guess. My guess is now from here on, they're going to reformulate a new offensive. They're not going to throw in the white towel, like I said. They made that clear, and I know their nature and I know their history. And who I'm talking to now is really Western Europeans and Americans and Australians and so on. If you really have a stake in seeing that Western Europe survives, this is it, folks. You have to fight now in Ukraine. And this fight will not be short. It will be long, and it will expand. Whether you join it or you don't, it's going to expand. If you don't join it, it's like you waiting in your bedroom, scared shitless, and then eventually those Shiites, who I am expecting them to now start joining the Russian ranks in the fight in Ukraine and in Europe. You're going to see them start like pouring in now. They came from Chechnya, like you said, Chechnya, it was destroyed, and like 250,000 innocent civilians were killed by Putin in 1 week, and so on and so forth. But you would see soldiers coming from Chechnya now into Ukraine, and these are the Shiites of Chechnya. They are very similar to those ones who fought in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, and now they're fighting in Chechnya. Now, if Putin's Pustalinins falter, and they did, right? And they will if there is really serious movement and effort on behalf of Western Europe, Germany in particular. If they provide weapons, those Shiites are going to show up in multitude from Iran, from Kazakhstan, from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from here and there, and even the Syrian regime will supply Alawite machines, or trained dogs to fight against the Ukrainians, that Ukraine. So this is the important point is, and in fact, if they falter further, you will see Chinese conscripts join the fight. There is a history of that. When United States invaded North Korea or Korea, MacArthur was driving up north, and it was something similar to when the US went through Kuwait and into Baghdad in 1 month, or the Soviets when they invaded Afghanistan, they were in Kabul in 1 month. And that's what was happening in North Korea or in Korea, and then they crossed the 36 parallel. But then suddenly they realized that Chinese regime poured in hundreds of thousands of conscripts who encircled the US Army, advancing US Army, and went actually from behind them and then cut them off, and they were on the hills, right? And MacArthur at that point realized that he's in trouble, and then he called on President Truman to use nuclear weapons against China, who refused, by the way, for well-known reasons. And but when they were withdrawing, he was forced to withdraw. And when he was forced to withdraw, the Chinese were shelling with retreating US soldiers from the side of the hills, and they killed quite a few of them. So when and Russia is a strategic alliance of the Chinese regime and Iran's regime. This is not just a matter of mutual interest. If you look at Russia as a country, their interest is really with the European nations and with the West in general. But why do they go with Iran and so on? And take, for example, they're killing a lot of people and started to shell civilians in Ukraine. Yet they protect the Iranian regime and the Syrian regime, and they fight with them and they make sure everything's fine, right? And you would think it should be the opposite, right? Because of religion, because of nature, because of looks, because of historic, like races and so on. But no, I mean, I'm not making things up. So you need to wake up. My expectation is this, and that's pretty much obvious. They will turn this into a war of attrition. And if that doesn't work, you're going to start seeing those Shiite conscripts from Iran and Pakistan and Iraq and Lebanon and Syria and those Soviet republics, those old Soviet republics. There are some Shiite population in there. They're going to start showing up, and the Chechens are already doing that, right? And they will be armed, so it will be a painful situation. And if they win, guess what? What's coming your way? The takeover of Putin or Pustalinins of Europe is not one iota different from the takeover of Iran of the Middle East. It's not working, of course, you know that. Officially, it's working. Like the tripod is standing, but there are so many problems. One strong blow and, the whole thing is going to fall like a house of cards. But that's what I'm talking about. Now, Europeans, you have a choice of different choices. One, you can avoid the whole conflict, wait and see situation. And what's going to happen is basically, eventually, slowly but surely, you're going to look like the Iran's people, like the Afghanistan people, like the Syrian people, those who are Shiites and otherwise. Their situation ever since Khomeini came into power, let's take Ayatollah Khomeini, for example, and Hafiz al-Assad, the father of this guy. And those people are either kill and get killed, and they live in total poverty. They're deprived of anything that is necessity for humans. They loot, they live in shabby houses, they're always on the front lines, they go for years, not even come back, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. So it's poverty, kill and get killed, reminiscent actually of 1984. He shows you the life in those rundown buildings and destruction, dislocation of the family, and so on. So you may think that's overactive imagination. That's not what it is, folks. Okay, well, you may think, well, you're like Russians. All right, like Russians. What have Russians been and what have they become ever since communism came about in 1917 last century until now? Just think about it. Even now, after supposedly the Soviet Union have collapsed, millions and millions of them are waiting and working hard or hoping to immigrate to the West. You know that, I know that, everybody knows that. Why? Because the life under Pustalinins, ever since the Soviet Union was established, communism was established in Russia, right? And every place where communism was established until now has become a hopeless place to live in, and people are just basically desperate. They live day to day if they can, and they work 2 jobs and so on and so forth. I remember after Hafiz al-Assad came into Syria, in power in Syria in early 70s, I was a young man. Life became hopeless, and people work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs and so on, and they hardly get anything going. So my case in point here is very simple, folks. If you wait and see, that's what you're going to become. Your second option is really to fight and win. You can go into Ukraine now, volunteer as individuals, and be careful of that Ukraine government. If you give weapons to Ukraine, don't give it to the government. Just go yourselves, take those trucks and give it to the army. The army will distribute that. Why? Because there is this very small, like not very small, very substantial suspicions and questions about the Ukraine government. And, this is not the subject of this video. Or you can take the high road or low road for that matter and help that tripod. Now, your governments in the West are already part of that tripod. There's the smaller hairs sticking out of those legs, right? But what's going to happen if you do help them? It doesn't matter if you help them. What the future will hold for you is what the future held for the Iranian people, the Syrian people who were loyal to those new regimes, and to the Chinese. Now, the Chinese, you think, is being treated differently. Yeah, sure, they're being given some money initially, but ultimately now they're in trouble. And you know what it is when you're under total domination and have absolutely no stake at your government or your country, and your only life is to support the regime and the establishment and the policy and die for them and so on and so forth. And they nearly went into a war with India, and that was going to turn into nuclear. And you guys knew it. There's no question about that. So that's what you can do. You have four options to choose from, and guess what? Which one it is? It's your choice. You can become Russian. You can help the tripod, those Russians, Iranians, and so on, or you could fight and win, or wait and see. Either way, your only option now is to go into Ukraine and fight. This fight is not going to be over. Not soon, and will go for a long time. If you falter, realize this point. The Pustalinin, what has happened in Ukraine, what has started in Ukraine, and so far is falling apart, right? Is something that was in planning for years, folks, and don't make a mistake about it. This will come and haunt you, and then this is the end of Europe. The agenda of Pustalinin and all his supporters is to drive into Western Europe. There's a new world in the building. That new world is not the world that you think about. It is the world of slavery, the world of machines, the world of, believe me, it is not much different from the world of Zamyatin, the world of George Orwell, not different from Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. It's not much different, folks. Once there is a certainty among the Pustalinins that there will be no more resistance, they will begin to execute that future state, which is really to animalize people and make sure that the big brother, who is Mr. Jones, came back to the animal farm and then put the animals where they belong. Like he trained them and so on, and they became the Winston, who at the end said he loves them, right? Okay, well, all right. But believe me, folks, if you don't care about what's going on, don't have children, because your children are going to live in a world that is... now you may think, oh, this is only a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. No. The whole thing is a beginning of a big thing. You count your money, you can put your money on that. And not just that, Americans think they have nothing to do with it, or it's too far from them. Oh, boys, you cannot be more wrong. And so are Australians and New Zealand and all those folks in, a lot of other places, like in Africa and in the Middle East and here and there. What's happening now has been described by JFK in his speech in 1962 to the Guild of Newspapers, when he talks about that thing that is moving ever so slowly and secretive and so on. Believe me, he's a president, he knows what he's talking about, but he was only scratching the surface. And the thing I want to emphasize on is what he talked about is deep and long and old and ancient, and it's not merciful, and it'll continue, and it has been around for a long time. Folks, you don't understand. You want to see how they will deal with you? Look at Syria, look at Iraq, look at Afghanistan, look at Chechnya, look at what they've done to Russians in the last century. What happened to Russia? I'm a little appalled by why Russians, it is their chance now. Why wouldn't they get rid of this creature of their back, of their chest, that is called communism, that took over about 100 years ago and still is sitting on top of their chest and will not move away, and is using them like trained dogs, and then feeding them whatever food they're getting and apartment they're getting, and they think they have a future. Oh, software companies, like. And if you look at all these billionaires in Russia, you will see that they're Pustalinins, nobody else. Have a nice day, my friend. And I don't know if what's happening in Ukraine doesn't wake you up to what's happening and what's coming your way in Western Europe and America. I don't know what will. I wish you wake up. I wish you luck, and it's time to act and activate now.